Snoop Dogg and D.I.
Hello and welcome to Villanova Tip Time. I'm your host, Chris Notaro. This is Villanova Tip Time, the Villanova men's basketball pregame show, and we are brought to you by Homefield Apparel as part of the Nova Insider Network. Promo code Nova Insider if you want to rock that sweet bomber jacket and more really cool stuff. The bomber jacket you'll see, I think, a bunch of the fellas out there tonight. The Nova Insider Network is out in full force at the game tonight. The student sections have filed in early, and they're looking really good and hyped and ready to go as we really need to bring the energy for this one, Cats Nation, because we got number one coming in tonight. As we know, today is Saturday, January 20th of 2024. Where is the first month of the year gone? And we're welcoming in the University of Connecticut, the defending, reigning national champion and current number one ranked team in the country. It doesn't get better than this for a Saturday night. Cats fans, really great opportunity as Villanova gets its next shot to take down a number one, which we've seen many times from the Cats in the past, most recently just a few short years ago. And to be honest, in my 2 decades or so of Villanova fandom, we've had pretty decent luck in number one games. We've had more than our fair share of taking down number one at home. And so let's just hope that tonight's another one of those in the installment. But tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the Villanova Wildcats this week. We're going to talk about what we saw in the Big East this week. We're going to talk about this UConn team and what we want to see tonight. And then we're going to have you on your merry way by the top of the hour as this game tips off on Fox Sports 1, right at 8 o'clock. So let's talk about the Marquette game earlier this week on Martin Luther King Day Monday, what we saw from the Cats. I think one thing I didn't really get to talk about because we didn't do a pregame show because I was on site live at the game at Fiserv Forum is just how the cool, we're not going to go into it now. It's, obviously almost a week later, but just the cool vibe around the Villanova Wildcats program and the ties to Dr. King, specifically in George Raveling, ending up with the paper of one of the most famous speeches really ever given in the modern era. So really cool link between Villanova and Martin Luther King Day on Monday. They talked about it a little bit. I heard people talking about it in the place in what they call the Deer District outside of Fiserv Forum, right across the street. There's a bar called a couple bars all stacked up there, but decent amount of Nova fans, and there was a featurette on this, which was cool to see. But what did we see from the Cats on Monday? Well, I had the benefit of sort of what I would call the unfiltered impression, right? For me, it was a game that I was watching with my own eyes on site. I wasn't really as much on my phone, definitely not on Twitter as much as I would be during a normal game. I was really just trying to kind of evaluate the team as it was, as the team was playing against, a really top-notch opponent in Marquette. And I thought, my biggest impression was this was a winnable game in what has been one of the toughest road environments for Villanova. Now, obviously, I'm biased. I've attended this game at Marquette just about every year for the last 15 or so years. And even through what we would call the Villanova dynasty of the last decade plus in the Jay Wright era, Marquette was always a tough place to play. Marquette got Villanova quite a number of times where Villanova was the far superior team in this environment. It's always been a particularly tough road environment for Nova. And I'll say that this performance from a Nova team that, is ranked lower than Marquette in most objective metrics, certainly in, preseason expectations. But this was a game where the Cats stuck out as, sort of being, very in this game, right? The final score absolutely did not reflect how close this game was. This was a tie game with, I think, 9.5 minutes left. And then Marquette pulled away in the fourth quarter with Nova having I would say a particularly poor fourth quarter. We've seen that a couple times this season. And most recently thinking about the game against Xavier, where the Cats barely hung on to that one because they didn't score in the last 10 minutes outside of a lone field goal. And it definitely felt a little bit like that in the fourth quarter of this game. So I think that can skew some perspectives. But otherwise, this was a very winnable game for the Cats. I saw Villanova making some pretty nice strides on offense, of course, highlighted by a dazzling performance from Mark Armstrong. And overall, what I saw from the Cats was, again, improved strides on offense. And when they struggled, it seemed to be caused a little bit more by Marquette really executing at a very high level on defense than, Villanova, messing anything up or feeling like Villanova was sort of letting it slip away. Again, want to keep our eye on that quote unquote fourth quarter struggle. But those are the kind of lumps you take during the regular season, and you hope that the team can just learn and grow from them without being overly critical about a game where, to be honest, many fans, many talking heads, many pundits, not too many people expected Nova to go into Marquette and win. That doesn't mean we should be happy with a loss, but we did, at the end of the day, see some good things from the Cats. And now, of course, they come home to this tremendous opportunity against the number one team in the country, where there's no rest for the weary. You're going to need to see that offense stay improved. You're going to need to see some fluid offense against this UConn team today. But I think obviously we're going to need to clean up was that historically bad inside defense from the Cats on Monday. I think that was probably the one thing I maybe buried the lead on the the takeaway from Monday was, again, historically bad inside defense from Villanova. But you can almost chalk that up as being an anomaly. Again, Marquette executed very well to a game plan that was designed to exploit the way Villanova plays defense and create some of those inside runs, which they were able to pull off at a very high clip. I think they had like over 60 points inside. So again, historically poor inside performance from the Cats, but something that I think you can point to as quite an anomaly. But like we say, they're going to have to clear that up if they really have any prospect of winning this game against UConn here tonight. So before we start talking about UConn, let's talk a little bit about some Big East news and notes from the week. I think the first thing we have to call out is the 3 overtime game from Creighton and Seton Hall today. This was like right in the middle of the afternoon after lunchtime today. So many of you with a bustling social life, or those of you that, of course, are attending the Villanova game, hopefully getting your pregame on that early, so you may have missed this one. Anytime any game goes to 3 overtime, it's going to have my attention. But this one was a particularly excellent game. I will say, and I tweeted about this earlier, while I think the outcome favors Villanova because of having that win at Creighton on the resume already, I do think Seton Hall absolutely got robbed at the end of second overtime. If you haven't seen the clip, I definitely invite you to go look it up. It's making the rounds on Twitter pretty heavily because at the end of the second overtime, or very near the end of the second overtime, Seton Hall steals an inbound pass, gets to a wide open shooter under the lane for a layup, but it's waved off for a foul call in the act. So Seton Hall ends up getting a 1-and-1, but they make the first, they miss the second. And then it goes to a third overtime, whereas it should have been a play on. It was unabated, open layup for Seton Hall. They were penalized by the foul call, and it had to be a play on by the ref, and the game would have been over. Seton Hall would have won. So you don't like to see whistles sort of deciding things that late, but it's just an excellent game to watch as a basketball fan. Anytime something goes to 3 overtime, we're talking about probably best game of the year in the conference so far. And I'm excited to see everybody else try to top that. Other news and notes: UConn absolutely crushed Creighton on Wednesday. So Creighton, big bounce back, getting the win in 3 overtime at Seton Hall today. They needed it to avoid the 0-2 week and probably a big morale dump after getting crushed by UConn like they did earlier in the week. And then some narrow escapes earlier today. Marquette narrowly escaped St. John's by 1 point, withstanding a missed St. John's shot at the buzzer. And Xavier last night narrowly avoided losing Georgetown roulette. Xavier pulled away that one at home, 92-91. So not a whole lot of defense being played there. And the Georgetown roulette lives on. We got a couple minutes left here to the top of the hour, so let's get into the matchup at hand here. I know I say this sometimes, and usually when I say it, it's because I mean it. I'm excited to sit down and watch some Cats ball tonight. Just always awesome to get an opportunity against a top ranked team, let alone the number 1 ranked team. But UConn kind of has like a dynasty loading here, and it'd be really nice for Villanova to kind of take care of this one, and kind of keep the chance of the Big East run through the main line alive, which you'll see if Nova is able to pull out the W tonight. I think it's a really interesting difference in possible outcomes on the Nova coaster for what happens tonight. Think about where the Nova coaster, the emotional fan roller coaster goes with a win. Think about where it goes with a loss. Think about where it goes with a bad loss. So pretty wide possible outcomes and the emotional sentiment for the fan base tonight. Of course, our good friend Willie over at the Full 40 podcast kind of drew his line in the sand. He's been on the record all season in both public and in private saying, Nova's the most 8 seed to ever 8 seed this year. And I can't help but agree with him. I think this year's Villanova team is chaos that you have to embrace. They can beat anybody. They can also drop some really bad games. And so you like to see that come around on the positive side on nights like tonight with number one in your building. Villanova absolutely can win this game. I mean, heck, the line, the Vegas gambling line has only had UConn favored by 1.5 points as of a few hours ago. And that's fluctuated between 1.5, 4.5. But the gamblers, the Ken Palms, the Torviks, they all have this as a close game. And so this is hopefully a winnable game for Villanova here. And like I said, a big difference in the sentiment. Villanova wins this game. They've all but punched their ticket to the tournament, assuming they can get to 19 or 20 wins. If Villanova loses this game, I would say not a whole lot changes about their current resume, to be honest. There's still plenty of opportunity. It definitely doesn't seal any sort of negativity whatsoever. But this is a game that really improves your end of season prospects and your seeding prospects when you get there, if you can take care of business. So if we look at this UConn team a little bit, what stands out to me about them? Well, they're 16-2, and the losses are a tight one against Kansas in early December. I think Kansas was then ranked number 5, but Kansas at one point had been around the number 1 ranking at that time. So, that's I would say a quality loss if you're UConn. And the only other loss on their resume is when they ran into the beginning of the Seton Hall buzzsaw that sort of emerged. That game took place in New Jersey at Seton Hall, and Donovan Clingan exited that game after about 14 minutes of play, and we've seen him have lingering injury issues ever since. Yet still, the defending national champion UConn Huskies have been able to regain that number 1 overall ranking in the country. So this is a very scary team. Like I said, it's almost got the feeling of, if you're a rival fan, you're worried that there's the feeling of a kind of a dynasty loading here, which we don't love. Side note, even though I've given them their flowers so far here in this pregame show, I have to point out how ridiculous I still think it was that UConn fans were talking about them being the most dominant champion after they won in April, after they went through a field of opponents that was probably not even as strong as some of the November tournaments in this season. So I still think that that's laughable, and I'm kind of waiting for that to come back around in the future because of how laughable that was. But at the same time, they were a deserving national champion. They were the best. They were the best team in college basketball. They look like it now. And so, again, that all comes down to a tremendous, tremendous opportunity for the Villanova Wildcats tonight. Couple of players you're looking for tonight on the UConn side of the ball: Cam Spencer, Alex Caravan, and Tristan Newton, all averaging around 15 points a game and playing like a bunch of dudes who want to end up on the all-conference team at the end of the season. Previously mentioned Donovan Clingan, one of the best centers in college basketball when he's healthy. He's had injury issues, but UConn announced today they do expect to ramp up his minutes. He was on a pretty tight minutes restriction when they played Creighton earlier in the week. Didn't seem to matter as UConn absolutely dump trucked Creighton. They're planning to ramp up Donovan Clingan tonight, which is important, again, for the Cats coming off of a really poor performance inside defense. That is a major threat. So down to the last minute here, what do we want to see from the Cats tonight? Number 1, Eric Dixon. The Cats are successful when they play through a thriving Eric Dixon. The corollary there is perfectly overlapping. So that's the number 1 thing you're looking for to see. You also want to see a hot hand from somebody not named Dixon in addition to him, and maybe an inside-outside threat game loading for Eric Dixon and Brendan Hawson. Tommy G tweeting before the game that the Amarillo Assassin looking mighty good in warmups, and wouldn't that be a really nice sight for Cats fans to see him get hot tonight, as he's now brought his 3-point shooting percentage for the season up over 40 to 41%. So would love to see that. You want to see Justin Moore keep ramping up. And then I think most importantly, something I found myself talking a lot about in private conversations, you want to see the team using Tyler Burton correctly. Tyler Burton is always coming up with a big board when you need it. You want him playing more inside and mid-range. You do not want to see him chucking threes. That is clearly not the strength in his game. That's not how you want to use him. When they've used him correctly or when he's used himself correctly, you've seen him thrive. And if you can kind of put all these things together that I'm talking about, you have a real chance to beat the number one team in the country tonight. But it is 8 p.m. It is time for the game. I'm so excited. Get your beverages ready. Get your favorite spot on the couch. Ladies and gentlemen, it's tip time.